I call to order the virtual study session for the Joint City Council and Lakewood Reinvestment Authority this evening, April 21st, 2025 at 7:03 p.m. To connect with the meeting online, please use one of the following links at lakewoodspeaks.org or lakewood.org/council videos. For public comments, you may post public comments online at any link on lakewoodspeaks.org. That is our online forum for public comments that will be left open tonight and through 10 a.m. tomorrow morning for any comments related to tonight's presentation. Will the clerk please start us off tonight with the roll?
Strom.
Here.
Fairway.
Here.
Cruz, I.
Here.
Cruz K.
Here.
Furban.
Here.
Kenworthy.
Here.
Kerr.
Here.
LeBure.
Here.
Lowe.
Here.
Maya Guerrero.
Here.
Nystrom.
Here.
Ryan.
Here.
Sharzai.
Here.
Sinks.
Here.
And Wolfram.
Here.
Great. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you so much. Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Our first speaker tonight, I'd like to introduce you to the Chief Financial Officer of the City of Lakewood, Holly Bjorklund, and she'll be kicking us off for the first portion of our the first presentation of our meeting tonight, the presentation on Metro Districts and Urban Renewal Authorities. Director Bjorklund.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes, great. Why Nicole is bringing up, oh, she's already got the presentation up. As Mayor Strom said, I'm Holly Bjorklund, and I'm the CFO of the city. For the new council members, I'm also the Lakewood Reinvestment Authority Treasurer. And the first presentation tonight will be an education on urban renewal, metro districts, and how they work together. We do not have a new economic development Lakewood Reinvestment Authority manager yet, but I am in the process of interviewing. But for this evening, we have Katie Feltus, who is the acting ED and LRA manager, and Nicole Stair, the revenue manager, and they'll be providing the education this evening. And I will now turn it over to Ms. Stair to start the presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, Katie and I are excited to talk to you about urban renewal areas and metropolitan districts. We'll cover how they're created, the ways they work together, and some of the challenges. We'll explore how each one can help fund public improvements. Urban renewal areas, or URAs, are put into place to revitalize and redevelop areas struggling with blight. A blighted area in its current state can hinder a community's growth, restrict access to decent housing, or create social challenges. On the other hand, metro districts are established to support infrastructure development and provide essential services like water and sewer in a specific area. Often, new developments begin with a metro district, and if the conditions align, a URA could be introduced alongside it. The process to create each one is different, but both require steps like review, negotiation, approvals, and ongoing oversight to make sure they're successful. And of course, they both have their ways of funding public infrastructure. Katie and I will walk you through all the details.
Hi guys, I'm Katie, and we will talk about urban renewal areas as on the first step here. So an urban renewal area is a designated area of designated blighted area, which a city has targeted for redevelopment. It stimulates reinvestment to improve economic conditions. Nicole and I will talk a lot about blight tonight. And when we are referring to blight, we're talking about the statutory characteristics of blight. So for an urban renewal area, the purpose is to improve health and safety and restore economic and community vitality. It assists municipalities to eliminate and prevent the development or spread of blighted areas, to encourage urban rehabilitation of such areas by providing public improvements and encouraging infrastructure. This happens through public investment and public-private partnerships. It can address things like infrastructure, economic decline of an area, and get development such as mixed-use development with residential, affordable, and retail components. Some of the financing tools, which Nicole will get into a little bit more later, include things like TIF, tax increment financing, property tax, and sales tax. Some of the potential benefits is that urban renewal areas often use TIF funds for projects like streetscaping, affordable housing initiatives, and utility upgrades. Projects that directly address the challenges of blight and improve the well-being of its residents. Metropolitan districts, or we've referred to them as metro districts in this presentation, is an independent unit of local government subject to open meeting laws, elections, open records request, and are organized under the Special District Act. The purpose of this is a financing mechanism for public infrastructure. This happens through a quasi-governmental entity. Metro districts can address things like construction, finance, operations and maintenance, and public improvements and facilities, street drainage, things of that nature. Some of the financing tools that become available is that they can issue debt, they can levy and collect property tax, and enter into agreements like PIF. Some of the potential benefits of using a metro district can include things like it may help get faster development for public services, cost is associated to the project area itself, and it has options for public space and public benefit. Now we're going to talk a little bit about using an urban renewal and a metro district jointly. These roles can be complementary, so it's a way of revitalization and infrastructure to be more stable. However, there are situations where we can use one without the other. Some of the potential benefits of using them together is that the city has the ability to have more influence. It's more of a give and take model. When using both, there are multiple financing tools that become available because you can use things like metro district, or when using a metro district, it provides financing through bonds, and urban renewals provide things like from TIF revenue. When using a urban renewal area and a metro district jointly, it localizes the cost to the area itself, and it prevents other areas within the city from carrying those financial responsibilities. There's also an opportunity for community benefit to get some of that development. Some of the challenges of using an urban renewal and a metro district together is that there's multiple parties involved, and that this sometimes can create some complexity. The developers involved, the cities involved, the county, the public, the taxing entities, the metro district themselves. These are all people who are involved in creating these programs, which can create some complexity. I mentioned earlier that the cost is localized of these projects. So that's a potential benefit. It can also be a potential challenge because the designated area is supplying the financial responsibility of the area. There's no guarantee the revenue is based on the success of the development, and it can be complex to administer these programs. An urban renewal area can last up to 25 years, while metro districts can continue on longer than that. So now we talked a little bit about creating an urban renewal area, creating a metro district. Now we're going to talk about the basic steps of creating each one of these areas. So the first step is identify. We'll identify an area that would benefit from an urban renewal area. We do this through a study, which would outline some of the blight characteristics, which can include things like slum or deteriorating structures, inadequate public improvements, or unsafe or unsanitary conditions. The next step in the process is we would negotiate, or we would notify the taxing entities. So we would notify the taxing entities of this study. We would mail them those documents. Then step 3 of the process, we would negotiate the agreements. The TIF sharing agreements are negotiated between the city and the taxing entities. Step 4 is we would move to Planning Commission. Planning Commission will hear how the proposed plan is in compliance with the current comprehensive plan. Next step, step 5, is considered for approval by City Council through a public process. City Council hears the plan, and the plan is approved through a public process. Next step is implementation of the plan. The urban renewal area is formed, and the TIF agreements are in place. Step 6, the final step of this process, is that is administration. So commissioners would have ongoing actions. They approve the budget, they approve contracts, and it's all supported by staff. All right, so now we'll tackle the basic steps of creating a metro district. The metro district, step 1, is develop a service and financial plan. It assesses the need of the metro district and how it will meet infrastructure or service needs. These plans outline the scope of the services the district will provide. Metro districts will also need to be in compliance with the comprehensive plan. The city and the developer collaborate, and the city evaluates. It identifies the boundaries, which typically align with the development plan. Step 3 of the process, it's considered for approval by City Council through a public process. The City Council will vote on whether to approve the creation of the Metro District to move to a vote within the boundaries of the proposed Metro District. An election would take place within those boundaries of that Metro District. Step 5 is to create the Metro District. The Metro District is formed, and the Metro District can secure funding. Metro Districts may issue bonds or secure funding for infrastructures and service delivery. The last step of this process is implementation of the Metro District plan. The Metro District must follow state and local laws and file annual reports. The Metro District themselves manages the administration of that Metro District.
Okay, let's talk about how URAs fund public infrastructure. The main tool that URAs use is called tax increment financing, or TIF. TIF is a way to use new tax revenues that come from revitalizing an area to pay for infrastructure projects. It's like investing in the future by forecasting the growth that these projects will bring. Here's how it works. When an area is designated as a URA, we take a snapshot of the tax revenue it's generating right now. That's our base. And you can see it in blue on the blue square at the bottom of this graph. The tax entities, like the county and the school district, keep getting the base revenue throughout the 25-year URA funding period. Now, as the area improves, maybe a new business move in or property values go up, the tax revenues start to grow. The extra revenue above that baseline is called the increment and is shown in yellow on this graph. The increment is what is used to fund infrastructure projects like roads and public spaces. After the 25 years, the URA funding ends. At that point, the tax entities receive both their original base revenue and the increment going forward. That's the green box on the right. The taxes that make up TIF usually come from property taxes, sales taxes, or sometimes both. The advantage of TIF is that it doesn't raise taxes. It just redirects the new revenue that comes from the area's growth. The idea is to transform blighted areas, boost property values, attract new businesses, and get the community the infrastructure it needs. Now, URAs don't have to work alone. Metro districts bring their funding tool to support infrastructure. As Katie pointed out earlier, some projects might need a URA or just a Metro District alone. But when the conditions align, both can be used together. This diagram highlights the key financing tools for funding public infrastructure. There are ERAs with their exclusive tool, tax increment financing, which we just discussed. Then there are Metro Districts, which typically use a mill levy. That's a property tax rate the Metro District sets and is authorized by City Council. It's added to the county's standard property tax collection. The revenue is generated. It goes towards paying for infrastructure and services such as roads, water systems, or parks. It's a practical way to provide new improvements and services to its residents. Now, at the bottom, we have two more options that don't need a URA or Metro District to exist: Public Improvement Fee, or PIF for short, and revenue sharing. When a URA or Metro District manages a PIF, it tends to bring more transparency and oversight. PIF is a privately imposed fee added to retail purchases in an area. The money generated by this fee goes towards public infrastructure and improvements and maintenance, including infrastructure. PIF is not imposed by the government, but by the property owner. Then there's revenue sharing, which can offer additional funding to support public infrastructure. Any entity that collects taxes or fee, like a city, a district, a county, can commit revenue to support support public projects, whether a Metro District or URA exists. When a URA and a Metro District collaborate, the toolkit expands. TIF from the URA, the mill levy for Metro Districts, PIF, and revenue sharing. This combination can increase funding potential, which could ease tax burdens and unlock more resources to revitalize communities and build necessary infrastructure. In summary, setting up and managing urban renewal areas and metropolitan districts together can be complex. Sometimes a URA or a Metro District is enough to meet a community's needs, but other times combining both can help fund infrastructure, support revitalization, and build new communities. It's all about finding the right tool to create stability and success to the development project. That is the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for joining us and for your interest in URAs and Metro Districts. I'll now hand it over to Mayor Strom to open the floor for any questions you might have.
Thank you, guys. Do we have any questions? Any hands up? Mayor Pro Tem or Commissioner Sharazai.
Yes, thank you. Just my question is really understanding better with the TIF financing function and a URA. Is there ways that we as a body could put guardrails on, if we want to see housing, but we also want to see multi-use with some commercial or things like that? Are there ways to encourage that or put guardrails so that, because what we're seeing, let's say in a place like West Colfax, which may be up for an urban renewal area, it's becoming very dense with housing and very little else, and would hate to miss the opportunity to have some diversity in that.
Yes, they're in part of the discussions with developers. What is being brought to the table from the URA perspective, with the negotiations with each of the taxing entities, is paying for the public improvement. So in providing that, you can also ask for, we'd like to have affordable housing if we're going to do this. We'd like to have something else if we're going to support doing the public improvement through this funding, which is that each of the tax entities is giving up their own taxes in order to support the project. So they want something back, and that's part of the discussion with the developer.
But just one clarifying point. Thank you for that. The public improvement isn't solely like connecting to sewer lines and making roads that run through potentially new neighborhoods. It could be broader than that. We want to see XYZ amount of like commercial development or things like that that would help generate and stimulate the economy.
You can request that of the developer, but the funding that's used for the URA has to be specifically for public improvement. So the things that you had mentioned. So you can ask the developer to commit to that in part as part of their project.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Wolfram.
Hi, I'm just having trouble wrapping my head around exactly what a metro district is. And can you give me a couple of examples of metro districts that are in Lakewood at the moment?
Katie or Nicole, do you have some examples of those? We don't actually operate a metro district. Metro districts are operated separately from the city.
Right, okay.
So we, in terms of the separation between, let me answer this question before I see if they have specifics. The URA is something that would be part of what the LRA, so the board that you're on, runs, controls, administrates. But a metro district is controlled by a separate entity, which would be a special district. So the city does not, and the LRA does not control what the metro district is or what they do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does, because so I'm coming to you from West Metro tonight. And so, yeah, I guess my question would then be lowered down to, can you give me examples of specific metro districts that operate within Lakewood then?
So there's,
go ahead.
There are several metro districts. I think there's, thousands of metro districts in Colorado itself. But in the city of Lakewood, I know for sure we have one. We have actually two in the Belmar area. They're called Plaza Metro District 1, 2, and 3. And then we also, I believe there's some also in the Rooney Valley area. They're quite common all over. There's I don't know if you know about, it's not in Lakewood, but like King Carl Ranch, that whole area is a metro district. I don't know the exact name of the ones that are in the Solterra area, but there's a metro district there also.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. That gives me an idea. Thank you.
I was going to mention Red Rocks Ranch. Yeah, thank you. Red Rocks Ranch, which is there in the Solterra area, the Rooney Valley. That's a metro district. I believe also the Green Gables development. Most of the new developments you see around Jeffco are also set up as metro districts.
Okay. Okay. Thank you all.
Commissioner Sinks.
Thank you. Thanks for this presentation. It's great to hear the connection between URAs and TIFs, etc. I watched the Planning Commission, the presentation by people with the Bend present to the Planning Commission. I don't know, was it back in February or even January? It was a really good presentation. All those all the public watching that hasn't seen that would also be some really good background. And just, I don't know, a comment or question. So you mentioned in the presentation tonight, statutory characteristics of blight. So that's in the Colorado Revised Statutes. Do I understand that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, and could you I think I remember hearing that that's this property that we'll be considering in the next agenda met like 9 out of 11 characteristics of blight. And so could you elaborate a little bit on those statutory characteristics, or is this not the time?
Commissioner Sinks, I want to just step in here for a really quick second. We need to make abundantly clear that a 101 tonight on metro districts and urban renewal areas is completely separate from our second agenda item. So we can talk about a single project. We're going to talk about the single project under the project, but it needs to remain very distinctly separate from this conversation. So I don't know if you want to ask your question there. We will not, regardless of where we are in the meeting, we will not be able to discuss metro districts and urban renewal areas as it relates to that specific project. If you think back to the slides that they walked us through, both of those projects will land us in a situation where we will be needing to come to the table in a quasi-judicial matter, which means we cannot have previous conversations about the thing that we will be deciding upon. So if anybody's thinking about particular questions, I know it's really hard because we've got things that feel like they're overlapping, but we need to make sure that this is in general topic of the metro districts and the URA, the urban renewal area, and the project is separate.
Great.
Does that change your wanting to ask the question?
Yes, it
now
does.
Or later or at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it does change it. And thank you so much for that distinction. And I yield my time.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor or Commissioner Sinks. Commissioner Ryan.
Thank you. So if I want to understand this just in a general sense, not about a particular project, if a developer comes to us with a request for an urban development or urban renewal development, and they check all the statutory boxes, are we required to approve the project, or do we still have the discretion to approve or reject the project?
So as the LRA board, the role that you have is to determine if it meets the requirements for the being a urban renewal, and then determine what your recommendation is to City Council. And then City Council can make and can decide whether they want to create it or not create it. And maybe John Van Landschoot wants to add to that from a legal perspective, but that's my understanding of how the rules work.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I can add to that. I mean, that pretty much covers it. So, sitting as two different entities here in a joint session, City Council would have the authority to either authorize or deny the request for an urban renewal area. So you make a determination as to whether the conditions are sufficient and whether the city wants to go forward with creating an urban renewal area.
Okay, so this body can recommend to the City Council to move forward or not move forward, even if the statutory requirements are met based on our review of the particular project that appears before us.
That's correct.
Okay, great. And so this question was raised, at least in my mind, when our early, I guess, Commissioner Sherzai was talking about, the commercial aspects versus residential and what we'd like, maybe what we may or may not want to see in a particular project. And the response was, well, it has to be tied to public improvements. And I understand that, but the public improvements would go to support a specific project that we may or may not agree with, correct? We have that authority.
That's right. And it's also important to note that if an urban renewal area is created then the authority to approve or deny a specific project within that area is given to the Lakewood Reinvestment Authority. So you might create the area and then also have decisions as to whether you want to support a specific project or a specific proposal.
And are we limited to only just 25 years, yes or no, or do we have discretion to recommend to City Council that perhaps it be for a shorter time?
Yeah, the statute allows for up to 25 years. So that is not a requirement that it's 25 years. Generally, that is what happens just because the length of development to actually see those returns on revenue takes a longer period of time. But you are not required to make it 25 years.
Thank you for confirming that. I'll let others ask questions.
I just wanted to add one comment to that,
sure.
which is generally if there is adjustments made, that it's usually made in terms of funding versus the extended period of time of how long it's established. So the 25 years is usually put in place, but you may say that the funding will not be for 25 years. It would be.
When you say the funding can be tinkered with, you're talking about the different legal entities that a particular developer may approach and ask whether they are willing to forbear their taxes, correct?
Yeah, so the TIF funding.
Okay. But it sounds like we have the ability to do both, even though
Yes.
it may not be typical.
Yes, but just in terms of what has happened, that's generally how it's approached.
I appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
And I'll just make one fine point on that. It's the representatives of the Lakewood Reinvestment Authority that negotiate TIF agreements. So while the developer may be involved in giving an idea of what it would take, the negotiation itself and deciding what the length of TIF and the type of TIF that an entity is going to give up, that's between the governmental entities.
Were you done, Commissioner Ryan? Okay, Commissioner Furman.
Sorry, it took me a second there. My question, it may be obvious, but I feel I need to ask it. In the process of approving a metro district, obviously the service plan, what have you, comes before the body that votes on it. But typically, how many times do they see it? Because they see it and then review it. There's obviously public testimony, but is this process done usually in a couple of meetings? How long does it take to go from reviewing the metro district to approving it typically?
I've never been through this before, so I don't know what the typical thing is in terms of a metro district. John, do you have any information on how many meetings normally happen? Or Travis?
I would just say that it's a process that happens internally for several months, sometimes over the course of years. So there's a lot of work that goes on internally between staff and representatives of the city in reviewing proposals and making refinements to proposals and making refinements to a service plan before that actually gets to the body. As to whether it's typical to approve at first reading or second reading, I think that's really up to the body and what you're comfortable with. Whether you have questions, whether there are specific amendments that you're interested in. So I don't know that I can comment on typical. I'll just say that it is a process that happens internally for some time before it comes to the public body.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Cruz, then Commissioner Kenworthy.
Thank you. I just wanted to maybe re-up a question or just get some further clarity. I think Commissioner Sherzai was asking kind of about the nature of the agreements that can be negotiated through the process of the URA. So I just wanted to better understand. I think in the slide it showed kind of there's that process of negotiating those agreements. Can the city or the governing body only negotiate agreements pertinent to the URA that are specifically tied to what the funding can be used for? So like the public improvements that you were speaking to, or can that go beyond the scope of the exact nature of the funding? So like affordable housing, et cetera, like essentially like what are the nature of the guardrails that we can put in those types of agreements throughout the process before approval?
So the agreement that's established for a TIF is between the two, as John had said, that is between the two governing bodies. So it would be between, let's say, the county and the city of Lakewood. In that agreement, the intent of it is how much of the property tax would be given up for whatever project is that you're working on. However, you can put into that agreement other requirements in order for the funding to be given. The extent of what those can be, I think that is another legal question. But I believe you can put in a lot of things in that, as long as both parties are in agreement to have that be contingent for the funding.
Okay, that is that's helpful. And then I maybe just wanted to double background in Commissioner Sink's question. I'm not asking about any specific property. I do think though, just based on some of the public comment we've been receiving, there's a little bit of confusion about like the blight designations and how those are evaluated for understanding whether urban renewal can be moved forward. So would just love to just better, more concretely understand what those conditions are and how they're measured.
Well,
yeah, Holly, I can hop in.
Okay.
So I guess how I would describe it is, imagine there are particular challenges in an area that prevent the redevelopment by a private entity, or prevent the type of redevelopment that the community really needs in that particular area. Statutorily, there are definitions of blight. They are relatively broad. And I think it's important to think of them just in terms of they are preventing redevelopment of something that the community needs. Although we are not talking specifically about a project, those definitions have been posted. So they are publicly available. They're on Lakewood Speaks. I mean, I can run through them here, although it's going to be quite boring. They're slum, deteriorating structures, predominance of defective or inadequate street layout, faulty lot layout in relation to size, adequacy, accessibility, or usefulness. And the list goes on. So I think in a broad sense, it's important to think of a particular challenge for redevelopment of an area where public investment will create development that would not otherwise occur without that public investment.
So I think
Commissioner Lowe. Okay.
Oh,
go ahead.
I was next, I think. A couple of questions. My first one is, where does somebody, community member, go if they want to find out if there's a metro district in their area? Is there a clearinghouse? Where do they go look that up? Where would they find that information?
If I were you, I mean, what I would do is if you look at your property records, you will see it listed as one of the entities, the taxing entities on your property tax records. And then, but that's probably the first place that I can think of that you would check. But you should be notified, I think, when you purchase a home.
Sure, but if a new one was organizing, then they would probably have to give us a local heads up around the organizing one, right?
I believe so. John, you might have the legal requirement.
Yeah, there are posting requirements, there are notification requirements. There is a statewide database. It's on the Colorado Information Marketplace. So if you're curious about where they are, all of that information is publicly available. All of that is prescribed by statute. It's also prescribed by our own ordinances. So that's part of the process, is that open notification.
Fantastic. That's super helpful. My next question is, how many existing URAs are currently active in Lakewood, and are any of those close to concluding their increment time period, 25 years or whatever was set when they were established?
Have 4 LRAs in Lakewood, and 2 of them have finished their financing and continue as LRAs, but they don't have the financing coming in anymore. One of them
URAs, is that accurate? Not LRAs, but URAs.
Oh, sorry, LRAs. So 2 of them have completed. That is Alameda 1 and some people call it Walmart, and other people call it not Clear Creek, but
it's the Creekside.
Creekside. And then we have Belmar, which has partial of the increments have finished up. And then the last one is West Colfax, which will continue until 2029.
Okay. My last question is, how many blight factors are required to be present for an area to be classified as blight, given the long list of statutory requirements?
It varies. So generally it's 4. 5 gives you specific authority to use eminent domain, and if you're requesting use of eminent domain, and if the developer or the owners within the area do not object to a classification of blight, then you can create an area with just 1.
And last thing there, does asbestos count as one of the classifiers? Presence of asbestos in the building?
I think it could, yes. There are environmental contaminants that create a health or safety concern, is one of the conditions of blight.
Great. That's all I got. Thank you.
Commissioner Lowe, then Commissioner Ryan.
Thank you. One quick clarifying question. Council passed a new ordinance with sort of a new set of guardrails around approving metro districts moving forward. I believe in January is when we passed it. Can someone just confirm that ordinance applies to all metro districts going forward, that council would be in a position to review?
Yes, I believe that became effective middle of February.
Right, that would make, okay, great, thank you. One of the things you mentioned in the presentation, and was also in the memo, was, quote, an urban renewal authority can enter into agreements with other taxing entities to pledge tax increments as a means of covering the cost of infrastructure. When one of these comes together, is it typical that the LRA will have negotiated agreements with all of the relevant sales tax authorities, so the school district and the county and the fire department? Is that sort of the usual practice? And does it have to be negotiated as like a one-off bespoke thing every time? Or does the LRA sort of have a standing agreement that they just kind of copy paste?
It's an individual agreement with the LRA and the the other governmental entities. So each one is individually negotiated. And yes, they tend to all have some kind of agreement to a varying degree.
Got it. That makes sense. Thank you. Is it typical that there's like substantive negotiation where like substantive terms are changing each time, or do we sort of have like a standard issue agreement that for the most part jurisdictions will agree to, or does it totally depend on the project?
It just depends on the project and what entities you're talking about. So for example, if you're talking about fire, they will probably negotiate that they have some of the funding still, because over time they will have more demand for services to that area. If you're talking about the library, their services probably wouldn't change over time. So it just really depends on the project and the entities that you're talking about.
Got it. And last, you sort of walked us through a TIF example, very helpful. Makes a lot of sense. This sort of the blue, green, yellow diagram. It occurs to me in practice, like there is this question of like what the base would have done, but for the new development, right? So like clear example, inflation, right? You can expect the tax base to go up based on inflation. I'm assuming that that's sort of baked into the base. But there's the more tricky question of like, if we hadn't developed this, might other revenue, might there have been some improvements anyway? Might there have been some increase in revenue? When you're calculating that base, do you just sort of take the current base with an inflation adjustment? Or do you do current base with an inflation adjustment and like some sort of basic economic forecast of like, this is what we expect the revenue to look like over the next 25 years if we do nothing? Does that make sense?
That does make sense. Basically, it's the base is what it's generating now plus an economic factor, but it does not go into the analysis of what it could possibly be. It just puts in a factor of, so it's a slight increase based on CPI or some other indicator.
All right. Pretty in the weeds question, but
no, it's a good question.
But so basically you're just saying, okay, this is the current revenue. Let's apply like just a very simple, straightforward, like linear, like here's what we can sort of reasonably expect to look like with some inflation. And that's like the base. And so we just assume that any increase above that is from the improvements. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
I apologize. I'm sorry, Mayor. I might have missed it. The PIF, public improvement fee, does that spring out of one of these two, Metro District or Urban Renewal Zone? Or is that a completely separate beast?
They often, a PIF can be from, they're in place by the owner itself, and it's attached to the land. They don't have to be associated with a urban renewal area or a metro district, but often they are, because it's another tool for funding public infrastructure and public improvements. So a lot of times they are associated with that, which also at times can give it more transparency of where the funds are being used and how they're handled. So they kind of go hand in hand very often.
Okay, so someone who might jointly have the urban renewal zone or benefits, and then also have the metro, could also have a public improvement fee that the landowner determines. Is that how that works? Or is someone use guardrails? Is there restrictions or limits as to how much they can charge? Or is that something this body should be paying attention to?
So it's a covenant that runs with the land. So they're essentially putting a restriction on their own land. There are some guardrails, but that's not something that the city council would specifically oversee, because that's a fee that's imposed by the owner of the land. That's their choice.
Right. Okay. So they create it through their covenant restrictions.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Any final questions? right. Well, I'm not sure how many of you are sticking around for part 2, but for those that are not, thank you very much for all of your work putting this presentation together for us this evening and going through it and helping us get through all of our questions and answers. And we will go ahead and transition over to our second topic. And for that, that is the topic that is regarding a specific development called the Bend development. And our speaker this evening, I'll hand the floor over to our Chief of Sustainability and Community Development, Travis Parker, who will introduce this item and our additional speakers this evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Good to see you. I'll be joined tonight by Community Resources Director Tracy Wieland and Public Works Director Max Kirschbaum. And I believe Tracy is going to share her screen and run the presentation today, but I will get started talking while we're awaiting that. So this, as you've heard, we're here tonight to talk about development proposal at the Bend. This is the Federal Center property that was recently sold by GSA to a private developer on the next page. And we're going to talk about several things tonight. For what we're not going to talk about are, as you've heard, a Metro District and a URA. Both of those are quasi-judicial applications that are coming through in relation to this property that we'll be talking about at a public hearing in May. But there are other aspects of this property that are not quasi-judicial that will or might be coming to council. And that's the reason for some of the background that we're going to be talking about today. So this is a vicinity map. The property that we're talking about is in blue in the northwest corner. This is an old overlay of the Federal Center development plan that was done in 2007. So a lot of this was never developed or hasn't yet been developed on the Federal Center. But the property in blue was sold last year by the GSA to a private development company that is now working with the city on developing this parcel. Parcel sits south of US 6, east of Union Boulevard and west of the existing Fed Center and north of St. Anthony's Hospital and the existing RTD parking lot. On the next slide, you'll see a graphic of the potential site plan. This is still very early. Not a lot's been done yet on this. But the concept is for a number of large multi-use buildings. So this includes primarily residential development, but the areas circled in red include retail as well on the ground floor. So the ultimate build out is between 2,000 and 2,150 units in total, nearly 100,000 square feet of retail centered in those areas circled in red. All of the white on this is potential future buildings. The gray is parking. So you can see that the parking will be in garages, fully wrapped by buildings. And again, this is a very preliminary site plan that will obviously change through the development process yet to come. On the next two slides, you'll see just some concept photos of what the idea is, what the concept is for this area. So we're talking multi-story, 4 or 5 story buildings with an urban feel, public plazas in the middle, green space and trees, spread throughout the property. And in the middle of that graphic there, you're going to hear more from the Community Resources Director on a potential tie-in with the city's Trolley Car 25. The next slide has additional graphics of some of the green space that could be built through and out, walking trails, shade structures, a lot of landscaping throughout this development to add green to what is otherwise, a transit-oriented development right on a light rail stop. One of the things on the next slide that I want to talk about is affordable housing. A big component of this and a priority of the city from day one in working with this developer has been affordable housing. You will hear more in May about how this ties into potential URA and metro districts. But for now, the concept is that there's an affordable housing component of this project. The city, Lakewood has committed under Prop 123 to producing 158 affordable units every year throughout the city. We have a long way to go to meet that goal for our first reporting period in 2026. But this project could help us work toward that goal. The commitment right now from the developer is 10% of these units would be affordable. So that's over 200 new affordable units. Those units would be provided at 60% AMI to help us meet those Prop 123 goals. And then the final slide I want to talk about is talking about this distinction and relationship between open space and parkland. After this slide, I'm going to turn it over to Community Resource Director, who's going to talk about the parkland dedication on this project. But first, I want to set the stage in talking about the distinction between open space and parkland. In our zoning ordinance, we require a percentage of every new development and a percentage of every lot that is reserved as open space. This is separate from and distinct to our requirements for parkland dedication in residential properties. So open space in this zone, we require 10% of every lot to be open space, every lot or development to be open space. That open space can be public or private. So private courtyards into a building count as your open space. There's some provisions to allow some roof deck space, some plaza area space. So these can be green spaces with trees and grass, but they can also be plazas and courtyards and roof decks and that sort of thing. That meets their zoning open space requirement. Separately from that, for residential development, the city requires parkland dedication. And these are additional spaces above and beyond a development's open space requirements. So this includes areas that are dedicated to the public. They either have to be dedicated and owned by the city or have a public access easement over them for properties that, we want to be public parkland, but the city doesn't want to own. And so those spaces must be public. They can also be green and or public meeting areas and plaza areas, but there is no double counting. So I want to make that really clear. The zoning team requires this 10% open space that can be public or private. Any parkland dedication negotiated or achieved by the Community Resources Department is above and beyond the open space. And you'll see a little bit more about that in the graphics that are coming up. So I want to turn it over now to Community Resources Director, Tracy Wheeland.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. Tracy Wheeland, Community Resources Director. I'll be providing information for this project related to the Parkland Dedication Ordinance. Due to the date of application, this project is subject to the 2018 Parkland Dedication Ordinance. Staff worked to honor City Council's preference for land acquisition and improvement in lieu rather than a fee in lieu. That required innovative solutions on both sides and a lot of work to get to a point where we have a solid site plan that we would like to review with you momentarily. Before we review that site plan, I'd like to give you a bit more information and review where the ordinance calculations come from. So let's start with the parkland dedication calculation at the top. It starts with 2,149 units with a multifamily population factor of 1.5. Acres required based on those calculations would be 17.73 or a fee or improvement in lieu of $7.67 million. Now, the proposed dedications and improvements are as follows. There's a dedication and development of the northeastern area, which is approximately 3 acres for approximately $1.75 million. There is a public access agreement and development of 2 plazas, approximately 3 acres for $2.95 million. And lastly, there is a Car 25 improvement in lieu, which is approximately 5,000 square feet for $3 million. That total proposed value of dedications and improvements totals nearly $7.7 million. This particular site plan can be considered highly conceptual at this point in time. We still have plenty of work to do with regard to exact acreages and dedications and the public access easements. However, for your benefit this evening, you'll pay close attention to the light green areas. The first area to the northeast, your upper right-hand corner, is what we are proposing to be a dog park. And this is approximately 3 acres. You'll see the northern plaza area in the light green, and then the southern plaza and park area to the south. The Car 25 improvement is proposed currently in building S1 in the lower left-hand corner. Interurban car number 25, affectionately known as Car 25. This deserves some additional information with regard to its historical significance for the city. So I'd like to review that briefly and talk to you a bit about the public access for this particular artifact. The Car 25 is a 1911 restored artifact. It's listed on both the National Register of Historic Places and the Colorado State Register of Historic Properties. It was restored by the Rocky Mountain Railroad Club prior to the city purchasing it in 2010. Currently, it is stored behind the fence of the Federal Center in Building 78, which is very close to this particular development. Other sites over the years have been explored with either strong community opposition and/or significant financial and even logistical obstacles. Proposed Car 25 public access, you can see on this particular slide, includes an enclosed space, again in building S1 in the lower left-hand corner. It also includes an overhead catenary track system, which is much more historically accurate than how it is being utilized today. It includes continuous public viewing via a glass wall that is on the side of the building. It also includes dedicated parking in the garage, the parking garage, and adequate on-street parking as well. In addition to the exhibit space for Car 25, there's also approximately 5,000 square feet of city space for events, programs, and rentals. And all of this is in climate-controlled space. Vast different than how the Car 25 is being stored today. This particular space, the exhibits and the classroom space, would be in addition to where Car 25 would be stored and housed. And this provides the city with a great opportunity to provide additional rental and program opportunities that don't necessarily have to be tied to events with Car 25. It provides a really amazing backdrop to have Car 25 as part of any potential events in that space. This particular space would be city maintained and operated. Lastly, I'd like to give you a bit more information about the current location of Car 25, if you're not familiar, and how this potentially could look in the future at the proposed location at the Bend. With regard to the current Federal Center behind the fence, it is really just a storage opportunity with no public access. The proposed location would include continuous public viewing. The current track is 0.19 miles, whereas the proposed track is 1/4 mile, just slightly above what the current track is. The current location at the Federal Center includes power by diesel attachment, which is certainly not historically representative of the Car 25. The proposed location would include, again, the overhead catenary track system. The location at the Bends includes temporary portable restrooms for events, whereas the proposed location would include restrooms inside the building. Currently, we are only able to handle and have one event per year for the public to celebrate this artifact. The proposed location would include, at minimum, monthly events, in addition to the rental and the use opportunities of that additional space. And lastly, the current location at the Federal Center includes a very uncertain future with regard to the potential redevelopment or sale of portions of that property. whereas the proposed location would include a public access easement into perpetuity. So with that, I will be turning it over to Max Kirschbaum, who will be discussing our next topic.
Thank you, Tracy. My name is Max Kirschbaum, Director of Public Works, and good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Before I begin the discussion about sanitary sewer service, for the benefit of any audience members who may be watching, as well as commissioners who may not be familiar with utilities in the city, there are more than 20 different water and sanitary sewer districts throughout the city. In this case, the property in question here is located fully within the Green Mountain Water and Sanitation District for sewer service. The applicant has expressed interest to the city in the city, who is an adjacent sewer district, to provide sewer service for this property due to their lack of progress with Green Mountain Water and Sanitation to obtain any type of commitment towards service. The Green Mountain Board considered this request in their February board meeting. At that time, it was considered to be indefinitely tabled by vote, and subsequently in March, the applicant has filed a claim in district court. So there would be a variety of steps in sequence that the applicant would need to follow through Green Mountain Water and Sanitary District if they were interested in pursuing an alternative to Green Mountain. I'll talk about that a little bit more on the next slide, please. So at the request of the applicant, the city of Lakewood conducted a feasibility analysis to determine whether it would in fact be feasible for the Lakewood sanitary sewer utility to provide service to this development. We are geographically adjacent to this property, but connection wouldn't necessarily be convenient. So the result of our analysis is that it is feasible to connect the applicant to the Lakewood sewer utility. There would be downstream and actually a couple of upstream sewer main upgrades that would be required, and those would be at the applicant's expense, not to the Lakewood sewer utility. Additionally, the applicant's proposed metro district would also be responsible for construction, operation, and maintenance of all the sewer infrastructure that would be installed to serve this property up to the point of connection with the Lakewood sewer utility. So tonight, what the applicant is interested in, because these steps that I described on the previous slide would be a series of steps that begin with Green Mountain Water and Sanitation District and go through Metro Water Recovery, which is the regional sewer treatment facility. The applicant would be interested in learning from council this evening if the council would likely support providing sanitary sewer service through the Lakewood sewer utility if it went through those sequential steps that would first be an exclusion from the Green Mountain Water and Sanitary District, an approval by the Metro Water Recovery Board of Directors, and then it would come, at that point, it would come back to City Council for just a decision to include this property into the Lakewood sewer utility to eventually provide service. Next slide, please. So to wrap it up, between what you've heard from Travis and Tracy and myself, the next steps in future approvals that would involve City Council would be the access and Car 25 easement agreements, the Bend Metro District, the Urban Renewal Authority, and finally, eventually then would be a City Council approval to include this property within the boundaries of the Lakewood Sewer Service Utility Area. And of course, as Travis mentioned at the beginning, there's still a lot of work left to be done on site design. That concludes our presentation for the three of us, and I think we're prepared for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Director Kirschbaum. I do have one question as I'm going to work on navigating our conversation and our answer for the applicant tonight. To me, it looked like in the presentation, there's a very quick and easy parallel between a metro district and plugging into Lakewood sewer utility. So it almost seems to me like, if I'm understanding the question correctly, it feels like there's more of a yes to a metro district than there isn't. Or can the steps be taken without commitment of a metro district? They were kind of drawn together.
Yeah, I would regard those to be separate issues. Regardless of whatever the financing mechanism would be for development of this property, the applicant still needs to be able to provide sanitary sewer service. So I think it's a valid question no matter how the property might eventually develop.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, we'll go Commissioner Kerr, then Commissioner Sharzai.
Great, thank you. Just wondering, so Lakewood Sewer Utility, but do they do water as well, or that's only the back end, the sewer that we're talking about here?
In this particular case, we're talking about sewer service only. I didn't make it a part of this presentation, but the applicant is also pursuing a similar course of action for water service through Consolidated Mutual Water Company, who is an adjacent geographic water district.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Sharzai.
Yes, thank you. Couple of questions. Just how, I know it's a rough drawing, but just the tracks for Car 25, for those who've experienced it and its current home at the Fed Center goes very short distance. Is this greater than that distance or the same?
It's slightly greater. So the current track is 0.19 mile and the new track, the proposed track would be 0.25. So it's ever so slightly greater. It would still be a straight out and back. So it would start at its current location, go down to the south and then come back, which is what it does today in its existing location.
And thank you for that. Understanding the exhibition hall would be maintained by the city, but it's my understanding, like with Car 25, they run that through volunteers. Like, are we hiring train experts? How will we run monthly events that move this train around?
We would likely be looking at hiring some variable assistants to help us to provide additional programming. However, we have a very solid group of volunteers that can assist to get those programs off the ground. The other component of this, since it's city maintained and operated, we would be looking at renting that facility for events that don't necessarily tie to Car 25 and being on the tracks. It could be for a city council meeting. It could be for a lot of different things. So there would be rental generating opportunities in addition to some expenditures to make those rental opportunities come to fruition.
Thank you. And then one last question, just around Green Mountain Water's decision to not have this conversation. Is there any indication that there's things working through the general session right now? Like, at what point does the city play a role in like having our water district sort of be more open to these opportunities? Is there anything that we can do there? Will we forever be thinking creatively on how to solve for this?
I think the opportunities for that are going to be relatively limited. This is probably a one-off kind of a situation just because of its scale and scope. Most other developments that we would see throughout the city have not had the same kind of difficulty working with any district in the city to provide water or sewer service.
Okay, thank you for that. And that's it for me.
Commissioner Furman.
I did have a question. You'd said that the connection to Lakewood sewer was inconvenient but possible. Can you I don't know, expand on what inconvenient means? I guess obviously I would assume Green Mountain was more convenient and easier, but what makes Lakewood inconvenient?
Well, because we are an adjacent provider, we don't have infrastructure in this area. So the point of connection would be approximately the vicinity of Kipling and 6th Avenue. That's kind of the nearest point at which our sanitary sewer mains would be available to the applicant.
How close is Green Mountain's connection?
Well, they because that is their service area, they have sewer mains that would be on, all sides of this property. But since this property is not yet developed, though the mains on the property itself are not there, but connection to their system would be relatively simple.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lowe.
Thank you. Just two quick ones. Piggybacking on Commissioner Kerr's question, Mr. Kirschbaum, you mentioned that they're pursuing this separate feasibility study for the water. Do we know yet if they've determined it's that would separately be feasible? Although I understand that's not directly on the city, or is that ongoing?
My understanding at this point of conversation, the extensive conversation that has taken place between the applicant and Consolidated Mutual is that likewise, it is feasible. It is also more difficult and more expensive because their service area boundary is on the north side of US 6. So as a minimum, this water service in a looped fashion will have to cross under US 6. So possible, but there will be cost to do that.
Got it. This is probably impossible to answer particularly neatly, and I appreciate that. But Mr. Kirschbaum, you mentioned that they're taking this to district court. When you talked about the sequential nature of this, is the idea for them to try to get resolution on this at the district court before we make this decision, or would these processes more likely be concurrent? Oh, I think you might be muted.
I think I hit the button twice. As you know, I'm not a lawyer, but I think my understanding at this point is that they're trying to pursue parallel courses of action to get to a proper solution. If that can't be achieved with Green Mountain Water and Sand, that's what they're looking for, a nod from the LRA this evening to just say, generally we would probably be willing to support that if all the right steps are taken and it comes back to us for an approval. You understand, they're in a little bit of a catch-22 predicament, because if they were to pursue an exclusion from Green Mountain without at least some sort of an idea of what Plan B would look like, that could leave them in a bad spot. So that's why, while you wouldn't be approving anything this evening, I think it would just be an indication that you would be supportive if the right steps were followed in sequence and it came back to you for approval.
Thank you. And just for clarity, is the relevant body that would approve this, it's council, right? Not LRA.
That's correct. It's city council, because you have, as city council, authority over the Lakewood sewer utility.
Got it. Thanks. And last, just on a different note, I think this is a question for Ms. Wieland. I assume this has been looked at. I just I had this question from one or two stakeholders that were interested in Car 25 in Lakewood. We know for sure that the space in the current plan, the dimensions adequately accommodate Car 25 with its size.
That's part of the final design and the conceptual plan that we need to continue to refine and finalize. So at a conceptual level, the answer is yes, but now we need to really dig into the details and ensure that that is absolute.
Right. But obviously the final project approval wouldn't come in front of us until that piece has been nailed down.
Sure, we have a lot of work to do on the conceptual level. So yeah, there's much more work to do.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Nystrom.
Thank you. Just a couple quick questions. Director Kirschbaum, with respect to Metro Water Recovery, will they need to make enhancements or do they have the capacity to support this with their current infrastructure?
Capacity for Metro would not be the issue. It's their role with Green Mountain would merely, Green Mountain is what is considered a special connector to Metro Water Recovery, whereas we as City of Lakewood, we are considered a member connector. So there's a nuance difference here that in order for the property to be excluded from Green Mountain as a special connector, they have to specifically request an exclusion that the Board of Directors of Metro Water Recovery would have to approve. In our case, and let's say they did that, when it comes back to the City of Lakewood, because we are a member connector, we do not need that permission from Metro Water Recovery to modify our boundary. We merely need to notify Metro Water Recovery that we've modified our boundary to incorporate this property that was excluded.
Okay. And I guess you had sent out an email about some questions that Councilor Ryan had posed. And in there, you stipulate that the bend at full build out could be supported if connected to the Lakewood system, et cetera. I guess I'm trying to get my head around when you reference full build out, and I heard references to 2,100 units. Is that only phase one? Or is that incorporating potential future build out? Both from a water and a traffic perspective, that would be helpful to understand.
Travis may want to jump in here as well, but it's my understanding that full build out, as we've looked at it, is 2,150 residential units.
Yes, that's correct.
So there's no future phases planned or potential future phase that would encompass the full build out that they're going to do for that entire piece of property.
Yeah, there is the potential of two phases, a south of 4th and a north of 4th, but that all inclusive is, that 2,100 number.
Okay. And is the proposed development all going to be rentals and all going to be apartments, or?
That's our understanding. Yeah, for sale product and multifamily just still isn't practicable under Colorado law.
Okay. And I do have some questions, and I don't know if that's something we're going to be covering tonight or not, but from an environmental standpoint, I've gotten a lot of calls about what's been done to date, what still might need to be done, as well as a portion of this plot was not supposed to be developed or disturbed in any way. And I would like to get a better understanding of next steps on that.
Absolutely. And actually the developer and their environmental consultant are here and available for questions if you'd like to dig into that now.
Well, I don't know, based on the information I've seen, that I can ask a lot of specifics, but there is a concern in the community about disturbing this location because of potential chemicals that are resident in the soil, and things of that nature. So I don't know, like, when was the most recent testing done, and what is still to be done, or are we assuming that the entire area is safe? And by safe, that means people will be living there. It's not going to be an office space or something like that. And that, obviously people are concerned about that.
Yeah, if Jay, if you can allow the environmental consultant, Scott Waldenmeyer, in, I think he can answer those questions.
Yep, we'll bring Scott over. Thanks, Travis.
Yep.
I believe you're muted.
There. Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Hi, everybody. Scott Waldenmeyer with the Vertex Companies. We are managing director of our environmental operations here in Denver. We're working with the developer on the project and have been involved since they acquired it from GSA. To date, again, I can go at least high level. We can get into the weeds, of course, as well, and nerd out as much as people want. But from a high level, when Lincoln bought the property, we performed a pretty extensive environmental investigation on the big chunk of the property from basically 4th Avenue and south, and then along Route Street. Over the last 35 years, the property overall has been pretty extensively investigated between the GSA, the state, different consultants, and then most recently ourselves. And the property essentially is kind of divided into two areas. You have areas that were largely clean to the state and the EPA's satisfaction, which were issued no further action letters, which is pretty much, if you can kind of picture the site, south of 4th Avenue along Route Street down to the RTD station, is essentially those areas that were deemed clean and cleaned up by GSA prior to selling off the property. There's an area north underlying 4th Avenue, and then the undeveloped piece that's just to the north, so south of 6th, that is still under covenant and deed restriction, essentially, because there was some impacted soil that was left behind. In large part, that soil is made up of impacted with metals and petroleum breakdown products. There is also some assumed asbestos in soil in that area. As a part of redevelopment, we've put together and have been working with both the CDPHE, who has jurisdiction over the site from the EPA, as well as Pat Matthews, actually with the city of Lakewood, and put together a corrective action plan addendum. So these are all under the jurisdiction of the state still, to make sure that the state still maintains oversight during any redevelopment, that ourselves as a third-party consultant and environmental engineers are out there during all of this, potential earthwork that happens, but then also incorporated the city's materials handling plan into our materials handling plan that got then submitted to the CDPHE and to Pat Matthews for review and comment. And we're working through that process with both agencies kind of concurrently right now. And just overall, the oversight needed, the sampling protocols that will be in place during that redevelopment of both the north and south half of the site. But ultimately, the south half really has been pretty extensively, again, kind of remediated, cleaned up, again, to the satisfaction of the state, and basically is unrestricted, what we consider unrestricted land use. So it's safe for residential, commercial, industrial, it could be anything, and officially even safe to reuse that soil on site. So again, back in the 2000s, in around 2005, GSA did a massive cleanup when they tore, the existing structures down and whatnot. And did a big abatement and cleanup of those areas. And again, the really only part that we know of that has remaining impacts is sort of 4th Avenue and north of 4th Avenue, south of 6th. So hopefully that at least answers, again, high level. Again, I can nerd out as much as we would like and get into the weeds on specifics and what we sampled for and how many grids we created when we were sampling and all that good stuff. But that's kind of the gist of it, at least. So.
Okay, and sorry, the area north of 4th Avenue, is that slated for future development, or is there going to be additional cleanup or analysis done on that?
Yeah, so initially when we started this, we were kind of looking at it in 2 phases. So I know there's the discussion overall has been the overall project. Initially, we had looked at it from the south phase, we'll call it the easiest redevelopment piece from an environmental perspective, right? Because it was cleaned up and issued these no further action letters. So from the north end, from 4th Avenue and north, that sort of area, that there's roadway improvements proposed for 4th Avenue. Again, all of the stuff that's there, the impacts that are there, will be managed in accordance with the state, approved materials handling plans and sampling plans that we incorporate, and making sure that we're, our consultants and my staff and stuff are out there during that redevelopment process to make sure that what is there is removed properly and taken to whatever necessary landfills it should go to, and and just kind of following that proper procedure. The area on the north end of 4th Avenue, what they call the landfill cover area, has had the clean cap on it right now. Again, what they did in the past, the GSA dug out basically, a foot or 2, and then put down like an identification barrier down and then covered it with clean dirt. So effectively there's a clean cover on there right now. We do that to facilitate future use down the road, but that area will get further investigated once we have a better idea of what that final development plan will look like up there. We'll determine what soils need to come out, what soils, how deep it goes, and kind of the steps to remediate that. Again, to basically turn that into another no further action letter from the state once we get to that point.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. I guess one other question I have, and I don't know if this is Director Parker or who this should go to, but in terms of traffic studies, it kind of goes back to my first question. Did we do a traffic study already? And if so, did that include the other potential build out areas and those traffic volumes when that study was done?
Yes, and I can't speak too in depth about this. We can certainly bring our traffic engineer to the next meeting, but yeah, there was extensive traffic studying done on this concept plan, and there are a number of improvements to specifically to the Union and 6th Avenue interchange that have been identified to allow development on this property.
Travis, okay. I'm happy to tack on to that. And I'm Allie Meister with Lincoln. Good evening. So as a part of this, we have gone through plan check review with the city on some initial roadway design. And so that included a traffic study. Traffic counts were redone by Kinley Horn, who is our civil engineer. And then we've coordinated with Kelly at the city on improvements. And that will include improvements to 4th. Today it's a private street. It will become a publicly dedicated street. So first we'll bring that up for the traffic volumes, and it's proposed to have a roundabout installed. And then we'll add bike lane, sidewalks, and all other standards. And then as Travis mentioned, the other largest, what we call off-site traffic improvement, would be extending the left turn pocket on Union to Fourth. Otherwise, there are no significant impacts to any intersections they go through and grade them.
Okay, I think there will be impacts in traffic volume though, and there's already a lot of congestion in that area. So that's kind of where that question is coming from people. So thank you.
Commissioner LeBure, then Commissioner Cruz.
Thanks, Mayor. I think this maybe is just a Travis question, but I'm just curious, will we see a development agreement on the May 12th, like around May 12th meeting, or is that something that's going to come to City Council, or is that just something you guys are negotiating that we'll take a look at, or how's that work?
So there will be a development agreement. I don't think the plan is for the specific agreement to come to council, but the terms of that agreement will be part of what's brought to council. So yeah, there will be agreement on the, the affordable housing to be provided and other things. So we can absolutely lay out all the issues that will be part of a development agreement that will eventually be signed by the city and the developer.
Okay, great. Thanks, Travis. That's all I had. Oh, I guess the other thing I would just mention is since Max was asking for a signal, I would signal that I probably would be interested in expanding sewer service if needed. So, thanks.
Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you for all this helpful information. A couple of just clarifying questions. Do we have an estimate based on the pictures kind of the wrapped parking structures of like how many parking spaces are proposed? Did I miss that?
We haven't had that discussion yet, but I'll allow Allie or the developer to weigh in if they'd like.
Yeah, so right now we have our conceptual master plan, and we haven't gone through this, any detailed design for each vertical, but we're doing all structured parking or largely structured parking, which is what our MCT zoning requires. There's a little bit of on-street parking, but I think we view that as it will be limited hours to support people driving to the retail spaces that are on the ground floor. And right now, the boxes are shown to park at 1.5 stalls per unit. And again, this is very preliminary and conceptual, so we can continue to evaluate that.
Thank you, that's helpful. And then I just wanted to clarify for the parkland dedication conversation. Ms. Whelan, I really appreciate you walking us through that. I wanted to just, like, from the details you provided us, just emphasize something I think I already know the answer to, but just want to make sure that the kind of value estimate, essentially, of the acreage for parkland, although it's not reflected in our new ordinance, is the updated value as of what we did last June. Is that correct?
You are correct.
Okay, that's helpful. Because I know some of the public had a couple of questions about that. And then, like, from all of the buckets, like, what is like the proportion of like parkland dedication we're looking at?
Approximately 3 acres would be parkland dedication. And then another 3 acres approximately would be under a public access easement. And then the approximate 5,000 square feet of CAR 25 would also be under a public access agreement.
Great. So that's like essentially the majority of the parkland dedication proposal is actual land and improvements.
Correct. Approximately 6 acres.
Great. That is super helpful. I think, and then also you mentioned where the dog park was, but I missed like which section it was. Can you just remind me?
Sure. It's in the upper northeast corner.
Upper northeast corner.
Yeah, outside of the, basically to the east of the northernmost development.
So it was like that big strip.
Yeah, would you like me to pull that back up?
I think I can visualize it. Okay. I just want to make sure. That's what I thought, but I didn't want to get that wrong.
Yeah.
And then I think just to respond to the kind of ask from Mr. Kirschbaum just about signaling, I think I really hope that whatever remedy or steps forward that the project can take with the existing water district can move forward, because it really does seem like it would be more expensive and harder to get service in another way. But should we need to go down the path of considering this, I would signal I'm open to it. Thank you all.
Okay, we have Councillor Ryan next. I do have a few questions, and then we'll start round 2 with Councillor or Commissioner Furman. So Councillor Ryan, you're up.
I think Councillor Furman may have been before me, but if you're okay with that, Councillor Furman.
He's already
you.
asked a question. We're still on
very
round
good.
1.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. So I want to just focus a little bit on the sewer, since we're supposed to give you kind of where we're leaning on that issue. I'm assuming the city is ambivalent one way or another as to whether it provides the water services or not.
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
I'm assuming the city is ambivalent one way or another as to whether it provides the sewer services.
Specifically, I did not make a recommendation that you should or shouldn't. I think it was more appropriate for me to make sure that you understood that it is feasible and that it would be paid for by the applicant, and that it, because of the upgrades that we would require of them, it would not jeopardize any future development within the Lakewood sewer utility service area.
You don't anticipate any interruptions in service to any of the existing customers as part of this project?
No, that part of all, that part is probably not the most complicated.
Okay, what is the most complicated?
I think just getting from the developed area to our point of connection will have some complication for the developer, because some of it will run through existing GSA Fed Center property.
Okay, in terms of permissions that they'll have to get from the federal government and others.
Right, yeah.
Okay, I see.
But it is feasible.
When we talk about the feasibility, and we've also heard that this is probably going to be an expensive endeavor, I'm assuming the city's getting this money up front and not through an LRA or Metro District or any of that.
I might ask for a little bit of help on this to make sure I don't stray into an area that I shouldn't. But generally, it is my understanding that all the cost that the applicant would bear for this would be included in their Metro District service plan.
So whatever amounts that they were going to charge under the Metro District plan, it's going to go up even more because they're now going to have to incorporate all the expenses of the sewer system. This is what I'm hearing. Is that correct?
Ms. McKinney-Brown, then you...
speak to that. The applicant may want to speak to that, but I believe that it has been fully accounted for.
I'm gonna interrupt here. I want to remind everybody that because of the laws on quasi-judicial hearings, topics specific to what's going to be coming out at the Metro District quasi-judicial hearing and at the other quasi-judicial hearing held for the URA, it's inappropriate to discuss those in advance. So those will be appropriate questions at that time. And I believe the date of those hearings is May 12th.
Let me rephrase then. Will the developer itself or a metro district, assuming that it's approved, be responsible for the capital improvement costs that the city is going to incur?
I'm happy to answer that question. So the developer is responsible, not the city, for any capital improvements that would facilitate connection and operation of the sewer. We're actually, I think, largely talking about it would be a metered system. So it would be a private system, and we'd have a master meter with the city, and the developer would be responsible for not only the installation of the improvements, but also the ongoing operation. And so with that, I don't know how much more I can fully answer and get into the details, but
that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, no, sorry. I didn't want to get you grumpy with our attorney like I just did. So let me just ask, will any remediation need to take place before the sewer work is done to do the connection?
No. So the connection would come into the site at Forest, and then it would go east of our site, either probably along the property line of the GSA's property to Kipling, parallel to 6, or within the CDOT right away. There's quite a bit of setback from 6.
And just to clarify, I think Commissioner Cruz asked the question, and I think you answered it, but I apologize just to tie that knot, Ms. Whelan. What's being proposed for parkland dedication under the old parkland dedication ordinance would also meet the requirements of the parkland dedication ordinance that was just passed by this council.
Certainly.
Okay. Perfect.
Different calculations.
Perfect. Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Stinks, why don't you go before me?
Thank you. So I know the light rail runs along and close to this area. I can't really picture the nearest stop, the light rail stop close to this property. Can anybody help me out there? Is it at Red Rocks or the Red Rocks?
Absolutely. No, that's on me for not making that clear in the first slide. This is directly adjacent to the Federal Center stop. So the Federal Center stop abuts this property.
Okay, great. And is anything, I know there are things in the works about transit-oriented property, and does that come into play at all with some changes? I don't know. Am I being clear enough?
No, I mean,
No.
so this is definitely a transit-oriented property. It's as I said, directly adjacent to the light rail. People will be walking on the Southern Plaza is, attached to the light rail station. So people will be using this, and this entire development is designed to be transit-oriented. But I'm not sure I understood that answers your question.
Oh yeah, I was so vague on that, but I mean that's a real plus, and when we think about parking and traffic, increased traffic, well, it's right there at the light rail, and so I don't know if any traffic studies will take that into account, that it's really a transit oriented property. Can traffic studies take that into account?
I'm sure that they do. That's a good question for our traffic engineer, and we'll ask them to come to the next meeting.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have a few questions actually. I'm wondering, for someone that doesn't work in this space, development and redevelopment, a full-time job, can you give me some frame of context around what exactly 95,000 square feet of retail could look like? Like what's, if we were to pick maybe a block of shops at Belmar, like is it equivalent to something like that? Less, more?
I appreciate the question. So yeah, this would be ground floor spaces. Think restaurants and coffee shops and neighborhood serving things on the ground floor. And if you can picture that site plan, a lot of it would be up and down that spine road. So that central road that going north and south through this development, basically there would be retail on the ground floor lining that entire road. And then in the northern portion, there'd be slightly more retail around that plaza there. And so basically you're picturing first floor retail spaces like restaurants and coffee shops and other types of uses, maybe dry cleaners, I don't know, other things that serve neighborhoods up and down that entire strip, and then in the Northern Plaza as well.
But how many is 95,000? Is it 4 or is it 11?
That's a good question. I mean, generally these things are going to be 5 to 10,000 or less. I can let the applicant weigh in too, but yeah, we're talking maybe a dozen different locations.
I think your estimate is right, Travis. I would say like a fast casual dining. If you think about fast casual dining, where you go and you can order something, maybe it's not full sit down. That's probably an average of 5,000 gross square feet. So 95,000 divided by 5, I think, is 19. But of course, you're going to have maybe some smaller coffee shops, maybe some larger spaces. It all depends how you demise that, but that's probably the right ballpark.
Okay, thank you. And I think my next question, Tracy, if you wouldn't mind pulling up that picture that you had offered to pull out for Councilor Cruz. I have a couple questions relating to that.
This one?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. So you had mentioned, somebody had mentioned, I believe, car 25 was going to be in building S1. Is that, am I remembering that correctly?
Correct.
Okay, so then when we look at this though, S1 is encompassed, like it's all private open space. So I'm a little confused on, and if we're talking about 95,000 square feet of retail, when I look at this, there's actually a significant portion of this development that looks like it's not actually open to the general public. It's more for private open space. So I'm curious, one, how is the public going to be aware of the fact that there's car 25 and this is open to the public? And two, is it going to look in a way that's inviting also for use of the public?
Allie, I wonder if you'd like to. Yeah, if you'd like to take that.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. And I wonder if you go to the site plan that shows car 25 with the track that's in there. And so the way this is imagined, as Travis mentioned, is that it's ground floor retail. So when you think about driving in on that main spine road, as you enter 4th and the north and south is the main spine, a lot of that or all of that will be ground floor retail. And so that's going to be full glass storefronts. It's going to be very transparent. It's going to be permeable. People will be able to see in the window. Then when you come down and car 25 actually comes out or it bumps out. And so we think it'll have a lot of visibility. The track and the catenary system itself, you will see, it'll be like physical poles with a line above it that runs down. And the way it's currently designed is it comes down and at the bottom, there's a teardrop that ends at a public park or a public plaza, I should say. And then we have a home for car 25. And so, you know, if we wanted for events or on weekends or for farmers market or forever, car 25 could actually also just come down and park as an exhibit at the public plaza. All the green space at the bottom is pedestrian friendly. There's not vehicular access. And so it's meant to be gathering space. That's where it connects to the RTD track. So back to the question on the station, there's actually platform access. So there's the platform is on the other side of the tracks, but there's access. And so whether you're a resident and you're using that plaza, or if you used RTD and you got off at that station, you would cross the tracks and there will be pedestrian access across the tracks at the platform. And then you open on to a public space, retail's lying on the ground floor, and you can either walk up to Hard 25 or maybe sometimes just park down there. And then again on the north, there's a generous public plaza or outdoor space, and that's all reinforced by the ground floor retail that hopefully draws from the community. We want it to draw on the community to really be successful. It's not just meant for the residents that live here. And I think if you go to some of the pictures as well, Tracy, it shows precedent images of mixed-use concepts where you see ground floor retail, but there's living above. The spaces can be used both programmed and passive. So examples of programmed space might be where a retail user or dining has a defined patio with outdoor seating. And then there's also more passive spaces such as lawns, where you could have, summer concert series, or you can have events, or you can just use that as families can hang out there as well.
Okay, thank you. It just doesn't read clearly. It reads as your public space is here or here or here. And then in the middle, all this fun stuff actually won't exist.
I think it's confusing. I appreciate that comment. The only places that will be secure, that's really resident only, is within the building footprint, so within the courtyard. But I think what we were trying to illustrate here is actually the light green represents what is going towards the 6 acres of parkland, or it has a formal city easement on it, access easement. That's not to say that there's a fence around the rest of it. And if you're not a resident, then you can't walk on the sidewalk or come into the retail spaces. So I can see how that's confusing. We could have shaded a couple other things in here.
That's perfect. Thank you very much. Then my other question, maybe you guys already hit on, this is the beauty of going last, is lots of folks in front of me. So you've already hit on the sewer and getting it through. My concern was Fed Center and getting federal approvals for the sewer. My final question, though, and kind of it dovetails off of Commissioner Nystrom's questions with regards to community concerns that have come up around the, I can't think of the right word, contamination of the soil. And I'm curious, one of the things that's been brought up has been around the possibility of particulates. So I'm curious, like going downwind to neighborhoods, and I'm curious if you, and this might be a question, Mr. Waldemeyer, for you, but what does the process typically look like when we know that we're cleaning up? I know this is a very regulated thing. The state is involved. We just did a hotel that had some asbestos. Is there something that you can say for community members that are concerned about this, about how the process will be done in order to reduce or eliminate that particulate risk exposure?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the big piece, so there's different steps you can take depending on kind of how things go. But usually the most common one is just wetting the area down that you're working in. So you'll see it even at big construction sites, right, where they've got the water trucks basically going through and wetting that soil down so you don't generate dust as you're digging and all that stuff. So that's usually kind of step one. You can go as far as wind barriers and things like that as well. Like you'll see around some of the the oil and gas drilling platforms that you'll see like up in Weld County and stuff, that they've got the big wind barriers around them. That's basically to contain any dust that's getting generated. So, for this as a part of our materials handling plan, and again, the one that we had submitted to Pat Matthews in the state, basically dictates, and it's got outlines of like, if the wind does this, or if we've got more wind, this is what we need to do, which includes wetting, which may include stopping work. It may include covering piles, spoils piles and stuff that are being generated as we're digging and things like that. So there's definitely kind of best management practices in place when you're dealing with, just environmental contaminants in soil and how you're cleaning it up. So the big ones are, again, wetting, as you're working, it may be stopping working periodically if winds are really strong on a given day and you've covered your spoils, or you covered your area that you're working, and made sure that those cells that are there aren't getting blown around, right, essentially. So definitely part of the materials handling plan, though.
Okay, thank you so much. That was my last question. So we'll move on. Commissioner Furman and then Commissioner Lowe.
Thank you. Actually, Mayor Strom, you asked some of the questions I was going to ask. I have a few questions that are similar to those, and I'll just preface it by saying, I think I've seen a lot of comments and questions about the, let's call the commercial side of this and the benefits to the city by having, economic development in this area. And I also think that, and I saw this a long time ago, some of the neighboring communities wanting to be sort of excited about the project. And I think there's a value to making sure the project, excites people. I realize it's at a conceptual phase right now. And so it just sort of can't help being very regulated. I know you're not trying to recreate the Radiant City or something, but I do have to ask a few questions around that. At 95,000 square feet of commercial, that's what probably in the end about 5% commercial for this. Travis, I have a question for you. In this kind of development where it's sort of a mixed use, right? Because this is the MCT zone, unless I'm mistaken. What do you typically see on average for commercial to residential? And I ask this because I think this is going to be important to some of the neighbors who will see it as an exciting benefit to have some of these things here. Do you usually see more than 5%, or is it? And I'm not trying to back you into an answer, but
no. I mean, so there's really a maximum amount of commercial that can happen in and less of a maximum of residential. So it's less about the percentage, but commercial is really only viable on a ground floor and really only viable on main thoroughfares, right? Whereas residential, you could have a couple stories, you could have 5, 6 stories. And so it's less about the percent, but more about maximizing the space that's available for commercial development. And I think this does a good job of doing that, putting putting retail where it will be viable.
And that leads me to my second question, which is based on the requirements for the ground floor relative to the, arterial or collector streets for the MCT. When we look at a layout, again, understanding it's conceptual, would most of those fronts of buildings like that be considered arterial or collector streets so that most of that first floor would be commercial, or would you consider only, say, the core thoroughfare be?
Well, and honestly, the core thoroughfare is probably not either. It's not either a collector or an arterial. It's a local street, and so it's not the retail there is not being provided per that standard. But really, this is being designed as a transit-oriented development, right? So that we expect and hope that there's a lot of walking traffic from that light rail station that's going up and down that spine road, and so that's the concept here. It's not that these are heavy auto traffic areas, but hopefully they're heavy pedestrian traffic areas.
Understood. Yeah, no, I think that's the majority of my questions. I will just say I think it'll go a long way. I think the precedent images are good, but it'll go a long way to really express, and I think a little bit is tied into even what Mayor Strom was talking about, the way in which you can envision the public accessible and public usable spaces to engaging people to be excited about the project. So thank you.
Commissioner Lowe.
Thank you, Mayor. First, just because the mayor did and Max did indicate that wanting some sort of signal from City Council on the sewer question, I do want to just chime in and say, totally agree with Councilor Cruz, as usual, said it perfectly. It does seem a little inefficient, and it would be great if some of our colleagues in Green Mountain Water and Sewer could perhaps be a little bit less challenging to work with on some of this. But setting that aside, if that proves necessary, if that's the barrier, I think it makes sense for us to allow sewer access. We certainly don't want to create additional hurdles. Can I just take a step back and ask city staff, Mr. Parker, whoever the right person is. So we've got, as the city attorney's already indicated, we've got some hearings, some resolutions that we're going to be asked to approve on the agenda for May 12th. Some of those are quasi-judicial. We can't talk about the substance of those. After May 12th, like what other approval, oversight or approvals have to take place, like for the city in general, and specifically for city council, if there are any? I mean, you mentioned the development agreement before this will actually be built. Like, I assume there's got to be a major site plan that's approved. Like, what are the other sort of key things that have to happen?
I appreciate the question. So as we're all aware, development projects take a lot of time and a lot of review on the city's part to get to fruition, especially development projects of this size, right? So there are generally subdivisions involved. There are site plans for something this size, there's going to be a site plan of the overall site, and then there will be individual site plan reviews for each and every building that comes in. There's, obviously review by the state and the city about the environmental conditions on the site. So there's, a lot of entitlements already in place in terms of zoning and in terms of what can be built on the site. But we've already talked about the things that do have to go to council: the creation of a metro district, the creation of a URA, this parkland approval for a site over 15 acres, and potentially the ability to serve sewer on the site. So those are the four things that have been identified that could be approved by council. But then, as you're indicating, there are likely a year or two of development review process in terms of lot line adjustments, subdivision creation, and all of the site plans, both big picture and individual sites.
To your knowledge, or to the city's knowledge, is this likely to come before us again after May 12th? And if maybe there's some open questions on that, that's fine. But are we going to have?
So I said that those four things that have been identified that need to be approved by council, 3 of those will be up for decision on May 12th. And the one that can't be decided that soon is the potential for sewer. So if things can't be worked out with Green Mountain, then they'll come to the city for inclusion as our sewer. And that would be a separate future action. Other than those 4 at this time, there's not any plan for any additional or need statutorily for any additional city council approval.
Great. So finally, just piggybacking on questions that Councilor Nystrom, Commissioner Nystrom, and the mayor already asked. For a member of the general public that's tuning into this or part of this, and is hearing some of this talk about the contaminants and the Superfund site, which obviously has been discussed in the community for decades, is my understanding. I guess, Mr. Parker or city staff or whoever the right person is it possible to just, the consultant has already chimed in with some sort of a little bit of a more in the weeds analysis of the site. Is it possible to offer sort of a commitment, a general pledge that residential housing is not going to be, but the city's not going to sign up on residential housing, or between CDPHE review and city review, residential housing is not going to be built until experts confirm that it's safe to do so?
Absolutely. I mean, there are both state and local laws that are enforced to assure that sort of thing never happens. Exactly. The entire Colorado State Department exists for that purpose, right? So there are state laws that have to be followed, local laws that have to be followed, and a lot of review. Employees at both the state and local level whose job it is to make sure that those laws are followed, and all of that will be done with this project and every project.
Great. Ms. McKinney-Brown, is it kosher or appropriate for me to make a very general comment about the sort of the Ben proposal generally, or should I hold off on that until May 12th?
The only element that I am monitoring very closely is the elements having to do with financing, which are being handled through or potentially handled through a URA and Metro District process. So anything that you've heard tonight in this second process that's specific to the Bend is open for members of the City Council / sitting in both roles as City Council and Commissioners this evening to speak to.
Okay, so completely setting aside the URA and and the Metro District hearing, which we can't comment on, just looking at the substance of what's been put in front of us in terms of the level of thought that's gone into open space, to public improvements, the CAR 25 plan, and in particular the plan to set aside 200 units of affordable housing. I just want to chime in that I'm wildly enthusiastic about those elements. We really do need to make more progress on our Prop 123 goals. This would make a really big dent on those goals. I just wanted to sort of voice that this aligns very clearly with some really big city council priorities that reflect what a lot of our constituents have told us they need more of in the city. And I'm appreciative that there will be an opportunity, I hope, as this moves forward in a safe, process that's been reviewed by experts, to deliver on some of those goals.
Councilor Cruz, then Councilor Wright.
Thanks. Just wanted to ask 2 clarifying questions. One, building off the conversation on Prop 123, just want to confirm, as the plan is now, if there were to be affordable units kind of planned with this, those would count towards Lakewood's allocations. Is that correct?
So actually, that's something that we're in discussions with the county about. So that the county is offering some of their revenue as part of their IGA for this project as well. So something that we'll talk about in May is what our discussions are with the county and how that what units can be counted by the city and what units can be counted by the county.
Okay, so essentially that's up in the air, will be a point of communication. And so like essentially how does the back and forth then move forward with that? Is just like the plan going to be proposed in the IGAs then?
Yeah, so IGAs are being negotiated between the city and all of the contributing entities. And so those IGAs will be presented to the LRA board for approval and the city council.
Okay, that's helpful. And then just kind of going back to the mayor's or Commissioner Straub's question, as like with the example of Belmar and kind of like trying to visualize this, am I correct in thinking that a lot of the kind of walking space plazas, some of the landscaping within Belmar, it's like technically it's private space, but it's open to the public. So essentially like one could see like how one moves through Belmar to be sort of similar to what moving through some of those private open space kind of designations would look like in the proposal for this property?
Absolutely. And I think we mislabeled that site plan that you saw earlier with the public open space and the private open space. I think the correct labeling on that map should have been open space, which are things that count towards zoning that may or may not be open to the public, and the parkland dedication bits, the light green was parkland dedication that are required to be open to the public to meet their parkland dedication. So like that center spine road, that will be, it's privately owned, but that will be a public thoroughfare, right? People will be going up and down there. There'll be retail. So it's not that these spaces are private and controlled at all times. And so that you're exactly right. Belmar is a great example. A lot of Belmar, the plaza and other places aren't owned by the city, right? But they are available to the public and designed to be used by the public.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thanks for clarifying that. Because I think, right, the public-private designation, I think means something for like how it's maintained and who's responsible for it. But I think for a person on the ground who's maybe not in the weeds of it in this kind of a situation, it would not maybe feel as different as it may seem from the picture.
Exactly right.
Commissioner Wright.
May I ask that we go back to the slide where we have the plan view of the concept plan? Thank you. So can you help me figure out, so it sounds like some of the property has already been deemed to be clean. If I'm looking at this plan view, what areas
clean and what area needs to be remediated still?
Sure. So if you look at where 4th Avenue and the roundabout is, so basically everything that is south of the roundabout, so building S1, S4, S3, S2, those have all been issued no further action letters by the state. To the east of that area, so you'll see that like the stormwater easement to the east of that area, and then Route Street, and then kind of the dark green space, that's all been issued no further action letters by the state. And then really, as you go north of 4th Avenue in the roundabout area, so 4th Avenue is an area of known impacted soil, so we'll be dealing with that during any redevelopment. And then the area to the north of that, which is currently comprised of N1, N2, N3 buildings, that area is also, that's the landfill cover area. So that's where we know there's also some impacted soil that we'll have to deal with. But then to the east of that, where the other stormwater easement is, that area has also been issued no further action letters. And then everything to the east of the light rail tracks, to the furthest east of the development area, that area has also been issued the no further action letters. So it's really just the known impacted areas are really 4th Avenue and sort of everything to the north, directly to the north of that, where the N1, N2, N3 are on that figure.
So like the dog park and the pink area to the north, that those are fine, or letters
Yep.
of, okay.
Yep. And those were all issued again back in 05, 2011, 2010, just throughout as they were cleaning things up. They were issuing no further action letters as they went to unrestricted land use. So basically residential land use.
And if I'm a member of the public, I don't live on the development, but I want to access the retail. How do I do that? Assuming I don't walk.
Allie, do you want to answer that?
So So starting on the south, if you came off of RTD from their station, you would enter between S2 and 3, and that's all, again, an open space for gathering, and the retail starts to line it. If you're coming in a car, there is some on-street parking, and so there's going to be limited on-street parking, but it can help facilitate the retail. And then otherwise, you would park in a parking garage. And if you think about using structured parking that's shared between retail and residents, like the gate arm for private residents would be on the second level above, and the ground floor would be reserved and signed for retail space.
Great, thank you. That's all I have tonight.
Okay, Commissioner Wolfram.
I just had a quick question. I appreciate the affordable housing portion of it. I know you have to do it, but I just want to say I appreciate it. But I was wondering, did you say earlier there's a state law that's preventing some of these units from being sold? Is that why we can't turn people to homeowners on this, or?
That's a very complicated question. So there's not a law that prevents for sale multifamily, but there's state laws that allow it, that make it very easy for people to sue the builders of for sale homes, of for sale multifamily homes. And so in Colorado, it's basically come to a standstill for the last decade. There are very few condo projects. So single family and townhomes can still be built, but condo buildings just can't be built because they will be sued.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you.
Chair,
okay, it looks like.
Sorry, you probably can't see my hand because it's the same color as my background, but I just got to add,
Commissioner.
Mr. Parker said construction defect litigation has been ongoing in the state for probably more like 30 years and has prevented builders from wanting to develop anything that is for sale unless it's in the multi-million-dollar category, because they can afford to absorb the cost of the insurance costs to build these types of units. So for sale units have not been built in the state of Colorado other than in the $1 million plus range because of our construction defect litigation. Lots of the lawsuits are against the developers and the builders, and they're losing lots of money, and then they have to pay more money in insurance costs to try to build something new. It can cost anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000 more per unit just for insurance to build anything for sale. It's a very complicated process that our state legislature has been trying to unravel and make it easier for the developers and the builders to build these for sale units. It does prevent first time and last time home buyers from buying something to get into the market or to downsize. But it's unfortunate, and it's at the state level. If somebody can find the secret to fixing that, that would be wonderful, but I don't think it's happened yet.
Aye. Well, thanks for that explanation as well.
Okay, and with that, then we do have the one final question on the table. The developer is asking for some kind of an idea on whether City Council could consider supporting going through the alternative for sewer. So and I guess, we're just looking for City Council nods on this, it sounds like. Is that right, Mr. Kirschbaum? Okay. So City Council, do we have any, well, maybe we just do, is anyone a thumbs down for sure on this? No. So I think maybe that's your answer, Mr. Kirschbaum.
Thank you. I think that's more than adequate for this evening. That indication and signal is plenty for the developer at this time.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I know we had lots of questions tonight. I appreciate the time that you took to go through them and to go back through some of them. So thank you to staff and for our development partners that joined us this evening. I want to say thank you to everybody. And with that, that brings us to the conclusion of our meeting. So seeing no further business, I'll go ahead and adjourn this joint study session tonight at 9:24 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for joining.